and welcome to Cover Story. The question we're going to be asking today is Dr. Shashi Tharoor emerging as one of India's best calling cards to the rest of the world? I mean, let's take a look at his credentials. He is a 4-term Lok Sabha MP from Thiruvananthapuram. He's won every election that he's contested ever since he came into domestic politics. Before that, he was an international diplomat at the United Nations. He's also a well-known author. His books are read in India and outside. He's wanted at think tanks, lit festivals, and also at the time when India wanted a multi-party delegation to go and explain his stand post-Operation Sindoor, Shashi Tharoor was one of the people it chose. So is he becoming a sort of unofficial global ambassador representing India's case to the rest of the world? Let's try and examine that in this edition of Cover Story. And this is not just because of the role Shashi Tharoor played during Operation Sindoor, but over the years, his interactions on the global stage, where he's always been forcefully arguing India's case, have made their mark.
I think purely on the specific economic argument that I've talked about, how the British depredations deprived India economically, I think you will find that the contribution of the rest of India to the state of Kashmir economically vastly outstrips anything else. So the economic argument for reparations would never apply.
And Tharoor has also showcased that he is not just articulate in English, but eloquent in French as well. During a meeting in Moscow with the Russian Liberal Democratic Party chairman, he responded in French to the chairman's remarks to host a summit on combating terrorism. The speech went viral on social media as yet another mic-dropping moment delivered by Tharoor.
Mon cher Monsieur le Président, le fait reste qu'il y a un pays qui offre malheureusement le sanctuaire à ces groupes terroristes. Ils ont leur siège, ils donnent la formation terroriste là-bas, dans leur pays.
Or take the one at the Oxford Union, where he asked Britain for reparation and also acknowledgement of the moral debt it owed India.
India's share of the world economy when Britain arrived on its shores was 23%. By the time the British left, it was down to below 4%.
That was in 2015, at a time when the BJP was painting itself as the sole custodian of nationalism and taking the high moral ground. However, it was Tharoor's speech that went viral. This is really his best calling card, the recognition that he has as a thought leader with a global outreach, one that appeals across party lines. More recently, Tharoor has announced that he will be featuring in a 10-part series on Russian television. This will be based on one of his books, An Era of Darkness, that exposes the ugly truth of British rule. Written with impeccable research and his trademark wit, the book exposes just how disastrous the British Empire was to India. The series will also be based on British colonialism and has the enticing title Imperial Receipts. As Tharoor quipped, it is now time to collect.
Violence and racism were the reality of the colonial experience, and no wonder that the sun never set on the British Empire, because even God couldn't trust the English in the dark. By the end of the 19th century, the fact is that India was already Britain's biggest cash cow, the world's biggest purchaser of British goods and exports, and the source of highly paid employment for British civil servants. We literally paid for our own oppression.
But during Operation Sindoor, at a time when Pakistan had launched a global offensive peddling its one-sided and clearly fake narrative of victimhood, it was Shashi Tharoor to whom the global media reached out for India's side. This is partly because, for reasons best known to itself, the government of India was slow in reaching out and giving out India's stand. To fill the vacuum, the global media turned out to the one face it recognized, the one face it had dealt with and had credibility: Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
India sent a clear message, number one, that it was not going to take terror lying down, it would answer.
The only possible purpose of encroaching on what we consider to be Bhutanese territory, to compare to one of India's leading newspapers, the Express, which was headlined, "Hit hard, hit smart." It was clear that what the experts call a kinetic action was going to be necessary. there would have to be a physical response, simply because we tried everything else for 37 years and nothing had worked. The Pakistanis turned terrorists against us the moment the Soviets pulled out of Afghanistan, with lots of unemployed young men with beards and Kalashnikovs. It's as Hillary Clinton rather memorably said a dozen years ago when she was Secretary of State to the Pakistanis, you cannot breed a nest of vipers in your backyard and expect them only to bite your neighbors. So unfortunately, the old story of Dr. Frankenstein, build a monster that escapes your control, one faction of these radicalized Islamist fanatics decided Pakistan itself wasn't Islamist enough for their taste and turned against the ruling establishment there, and that's why some of these killings in Pakistan have been happening. So we sympathize, but we obviously would ask you to look at where the problem originated.
The line that Tharoor took with the US and the other countries that his delegation visited was something he'd been saying earlier as well during the Operation Sindoor from May 7th to May 10th. That India's actions were actually a reaction to terrorism emanating from Pakistani soil. It was not an offensive. It is perhaps because of this the Prime Minister reached out to not just the erudite Congress MP but also to other articulate voices from the opposition, because while India had won the war militarily, there was a feeling that we were losing the war of narratives, and the government had to launch our best defense, even if it meant roping an arsenal from the opposition.
No, I think that the challenges, frankly, with many of our external friends is that they seem to be very susceptible to Pakistan's pleas of innocence. Pakistan saying, look, we didn't do anything. Where's the proof that we did Pahalgam? The Indians are just attacking us for no good reason. They're a rogue state. I mean, this kind of talk. And most sensible people understand that when you've had a state next door to you that has time after time committed terrorist attacks, every time tried to deny it, then their denials have been shredded when the truth has come out.
Has India learned anything from Balakot? Because there initially we spent the initial few days trying to convince everybody, including the opposition, that a strike had actually taken place. But the messaging within the country and the messaging outside, which is why I guess they needed people like you to come and at least help them, give India's case out better.
Internally, absolutely 100%, I'm with the government on their messaging. Externally, you can't entirely blame the government because the people who could perhaps have been most authoritative were the busiest handling the conflict. You can't expect the foreign secretary, the foreign minister, the national security advisor, the defense minister to go around spending their time on international TV. They've got a country to run, a country to protect, and actions to undertake. So they had a job to do, and so the messaging was perhaps to that degree not as widely received and heard abroad as we would like. One of the reasons I accepted to do the interviews I did was precisely because nobody else was doing it. And I felt that, my gosh, if some of us don't stand up for the country, whose voice is going to be heard in these places? And so when some of the international channels reached out to me, I did go out there.
There were some in the Congress who were critical and accused Tharoor of towing the BJP line. But as Tharoor has said time and again, he is an Indian first and foremost. What he was doing regarding Operation Tharoor was defending India's line and not a BJP line. But to the Congress, it was as if he had crossed an internal line of control of sorts, but more on that later.
Is your party okay with the fact that you've been speaking, say, on behalf of India, if not on behalf of the government?
Look, actually, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I've not been asked by the government to speak for them, and they haven't been briefing me to speak for them. I've not been asked by my party to speak for them. I'm not a spokesman of the party. I'm speaking in an individual capacity as an Indian who understands some of these issues. Yes, as chairman of the standing committee as well. By the way, we have asked the foreign secretary to come and brief the standing committee.
Later, when Donald Trump unleashed his Trump tariffs, it was again Tharoor whose opinion was sought, amongst others, by the media as to how India should best handle this latest disaster. However, with not just the media, but as the chairman of the Standing Committee on External Affairs, Tharoor has played a role in shepherding parliamentary opinion on strategic international issues. His network with diplomats, think tanks and global legislatures makes his a voice that is sought. You've been talking a lot. We are in this era of Trump tariffs, and also I want to congratulate you for your role in Operation Sindoor. But now where are we in this vis-a-vis Trump? Where is India and how do we go forward?
Well, look, I think that the tariffs are unacceptable, unjust and unfair. and very difficult to figure out the motivations beyond a certain point. He has an unusual negotiating style. I mean, there's a famous anecdote of when he was being interviewed by Larry King on CNN. And Larry King said, "So what's your negotiating style? You're the master of the deal. How do you do it?" And he looked at Larry King and said, "Do you mind if I move my chair away from you? You have terrible breath, you know. Have people told you that? It's very difficult to sit next to you." And Larry King's face fell. Trump moved his chair. He dominated the rest of the interview. And then later he said, "You want to know my negotiating style? That's my negotiating style." So there is something to be said about the schoolyard bully school of negotiation. I mean, I made a comment the other day, which I stand by, which is that when Mr. Trump declares the Indian economy dead and I don't care if it goes down and so on, I think it's really the equivalent of the big school bully telling the smaller kid, "Your mother is ugly." He may never even have seen his mother, but it's just the idea is to demean the other guy, put him down, make him feel small. So I didn't take the words literally, but I said to people, you've got to take him seriously. He's the president of a major power, which is a very significant trading partner for us. $90 billion of our exports are riding on this. And very clearly, if we do have 50% tariffs at the end of 3 weeks, then no one in America is going to want most of our goods, because there are competitors out there who also manufacture and sell goods. Vietnam, Indonesia, even Pakistan and Bangladesh have lower tariffs than we do, and shockingly so does China. So if China has 30% tariffs and we have 50, I think we can say goodbye to a very large portion of the American market. What should we do? Well, first of all, we need to diversify. We need to find other markets very quickly that don't have these extortionate tariffs. And Britain is an obvious example, which is we have a free trade agreement where 99% of India's exports to Britain will be duty-free.
As mentioned earlier, there has been some unrest within the Congress about Tharoor's emerging role during Operation Sindoor. His nuanced balancing of nationalism with partisan politics found little favour with his party colleagues, who claimed that the time for supporting the government had a very short life and definitely was not a sentiment to be exported to the Indian Parliament. So there were some tariffs. One is not quite sure whether Tharoor was asked and refused or whether he was not asked at all, but his absence from the debate on Operation Sindoor was glaring, leading even the Prime Minister to take a dig at the Congress. This unfortunately is a problem not just related to Tharoor, but a larger one that the Congress will have to deal with, for it is recurring all too often for the Congress party. Within the Congress, there seems to be, are you unified on the stand against the government? Because you know what I'm talking about, Shashi Tharoor, Manish Tiwari, two of your articulate spokespersons who were not given a chance to speak on the debate. Were you worried that they would take a different line from the party? Are you worried about Shashi Tharoor?
Absolutely not. I think they are, as you said, they are fantastic spokespersons for the Congress philosophy, for the Congress ideology. Ideologically, they are like all congressmen and women. They are so far away from the BJP's ideology. I think these are stories that often come up in the media, but I think what we are in the Congress party, a very united house, and we would like to work with, and we are working very well with everyone, whether senior or relatively new in the Lok Sabha.
So then why were not, Manish and Shashi fielded in the debate?
Well, why were many BJP MPs not fielded in the debate?
You know what I'm trying to ask you.
I mean, why was Ravi Shankar Prasad ji not fielded in the debate?
I can see it happening with many people who are in the Congress even today. I can see that many people feel what I felt, where they feel they have a value offering, but it's being discarded, disregarded, disrespected for various reasons. And now that there's no point going into that in today's interview. That's a deep psychoanalysis of why the Congress shoots itself in the foot repeatedly.
But do you feel Shashi Tharoor is at the same crossroads as
Again,
you are?
I don't want to name anyone. I have a lot of friends who are in the Congress party who, in my view, should be, they're working at 10% of their potential. And in fact, I can see that their potential is seen as a threat in the Congress party, or it's seen as a threat maybe by the leadership, by people around the leadership. So how do they resolve that problem? I don't know. I don't see it as an easy problem to resolve. It took me 10 years to hope and try to resolve it. It didn't happen. And I realized after 10 long years, maybe it took me a long time, that things will not change because of the nature and the architecture of the Congress party. And I say this not to score a political point, but ultimately it's beyond ideology and everything else. It's a family party, and you have to. So there is a glass ceiling.
It is not as if Tharoor has not attacked the BJP-led government or that he's been reticent in defending the Congress. He has been one of the most articulate voices from the Congress benches during parliamentary debates. Take for instance the speech that went viral during the recent budget session where he recited a poem to take on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
Let me capture the present situation in some light verse. Tax our petrol, tax our shirt, tax our footwear, tax our dirt. Tax our mobile, tax our calls, tax our hovels, crumbling walls. Tax our salary, tax our ride, tax our mithai on the side. Tax our sorrow, tax our cheer, tax our future year by year. GST income tax forms pile high, cesses, surcharges make us sigh. Roads with potholes, trains that derail. Where does it go? Is it all a fail? When we ask, is this all in vain? You smile and say, it's for the nation's gain. And if we ask you to try and fix it, you point and say, you will be Vixit. Yet still we pay with a patriotic heart, hoping our cash will play a small part in building a future bright and fair for the nation we love beyond compare.
What the Congress has in Tharoor is a leader whose appeal far extends the party platform. A large part of what goes into building brand Tharoor is the force of his own personality and achievements that go beyond party politics.
I've always tried to be more than just, a regular politician, and that's my nature. I'm not a cookie cutter stereotype figure of any sort.
And you've got a lot of flack for that also.
Exactly, and you've known that. And I haven't fit into the norm anywhere, but I felt that what I could bring to the Congress party and bring to politics was precisely my individuality. That here is somebody who thinks differently perhaps sometimes, speaks differently perhaps sometimes, but core values and principles are in sync with that of the party, and that's what the party should value, I hope, through my presence and my contribution. That's the spirit in which I've done it. So there have been a few rough moments when colleagues have not understood what I was saying or felt it was not part of their approved strategy. But I think on most substantive issues, we've stood together.
Tharoor was a well-established author and diplomat before he joined the Congress in 2006, after having contested and lost the election for United Nations Secretary General. He then returned to India and contemplated the domestic political scene. At that time, he got offers from the Congress, the BJP as well as the left, since his home state was Kerala. He chose the Congress and was given a constituency that had evaded the Congress for a decade. And ever since his first election in 2019, Tharoor has been winning this seat ever since.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and after the break, we are going to be looking at not just at all of Tharoor's winning ways, but also some of the speed breakers that have come his way. Because like most of our problems, the major problems come from within. Hello and welcome back to a cover story that is looking at the importance of being Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
During the UPA years, Tharoor has been a union minister in both HRD and external affairs. More than that, he had also emerged as one of the more sought-after voices within the party and a go-to both on mainstream media and also on social media. Take this excerpt from an interview done with NewsX in 2014, where he strongly defended Rahul Gandhi's brand of leadership.
I think, you're looking at what the task he set himself was to revamp the organization, create an electoral culture, because we don't have enough intra-party democracy in any of our parties.
Okay, you haven't answered my question of the reluctant leader.
Look, I can't really speak for one individual. He'll have to tell you himself whether he's reluctant or not. I would give you the answer that I see, that is that he seems to have focused on the task that he has set himself, and when the time comes for him to take on another task, he will focus on it with the same kind of determination that we have seen him approaching his task so far. But he's actually been very active as Vice President of the Congress. I mean, he's held meetings with all the PCC chiefs. He's held meetings in groups with all the MPs from each state.
You're patting him for doing something he ought to be doing anyway.
I'm just saying, it's not that he's been sitting back and relaxing or disappearing as is often alleged. He's doing things that by definition are not visible because they are about the party structure and the party organization. They're not for public television media consumption. So to my mind, something like this ought to be seen as him doing what he set himself to do. Let's see if some of the tasks that the nation entrusts him, and I'm sure that he will do it with the same level of dedication, energy and time.
He was also one of the early movers on social medias, anticipating that this soon would be the new town hall for debates and trends. He was first vilified for this and later vindicated when every leader of note now has a Twitter account. Initially, his followers far outranked that of then Prime Ministerial candidate Narendra Modi and was quite a sore point for the BJP.
So something you may like to talk about, Twitter. Do you feel somewhat vindicated? I mean, you were the first one off the block, and then, a lot of your colleagues came down heavily on you. And
yes, I remember the then BJP President, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, saying too much tweeting can lead to quitting. Turned out to be quite prescient, but that's another matter. The fact is that, there was a lot of resistance to this unfamiliar communications medium. Though I have to say, initially, when there was first a newspaper report somewhere that Tharoor crosses 10,000 followers, a lot of very serious politicians asked me, "Kaise hote hai? How do you manage to get these 10,000 followers? Tell us about it. How do we do it?" And there was a lot of interest. But within a day, I must say, the mainstream media went after me so powerfully, and indeed political elements went after me with the connivance of people in the mainstream media, that everyone thought that going on Twitter was a guarantee of attracting controversy, so everyone backed off. And as a result, I think the adoption of social media by politicians took a setback, which it took a little while to recover. But after that, not only has it recovered, as you know, it's been a roaring success. The BJP has made such a celebration out of Mr. Modi overtaking me that one almost wants to think, wants to see it in some sort of Ben-Hur race, which it's not.
Always want to think out of the box and take on a fresh challenge, he contested against the current Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge for the post of party chief in 2022. That he lost was not surprising, for Kharge was the establishment's candidate. But what was surprising is that despite being the underdog, Tharoor managed to score as many as 1,071 votes against Kharge's 7,897. This has been the highest number of votes any challenger has got in the Congress presidential election, and much of it had to do with the kind of campaign he ran, focusing on transparency, professionalism and democratic systems.
I didn't pitch myself as the candidate of dissent, I pitched myself as a candidate of change. And change not in the ideology of the party or in the direction of the party, but rather in the manner in which we do our regular work. And I did feel that there was a need for opening up access to karyakartas in the party, creating more opportunities for discussion forums, implementing not only the declarations of the Udaipur Chintan Shivir, but further some of the additional ideas that I had published in the manifesto, which came to me largely from our own party workers who wanted to see these changes. And therefore, for me, I would stress that it is not so much about dissent, but how we can make a good party better.
Tharoor was the first to call on Kharge post the election, and the newly minted Congress president told the media that Tharoor would find a place in his setup, but that is not quite what has happened. There has been a subtle sidelining of Tharoor within the Congress even before Operation Sindoor, but a lot of that also has to do with the politics of his home state Kerala, which is slated to go to polls in 2027. The Congress stands a good chance of winning the state, but what it lacks is a tall pan-state leader who could be projected as the party's CM face. In terms of optics, Tharoor has an advantage, but this is also an advantage that clashes against the ambitions of one of the party's more powerful leaders, K.C. Venugopal, who is also an MP from Kerala, and more importantly, one who is known for his proximity to Rahul Gandhi. So well, there goes that plan. But there will be others.
Someone said this is your last campaign. Is that correct?
I said for the Lok Sabha,
Aha.
probably you will be
Way
right.
to bury the lead. You're giving me the best part at the end.
No, you asked. In an interview, I said, I said two things. I said, first, it's probably time that I consider stepping aside for a younger person, let somebody else have an opportunity. It's a challenging seat in the sense that you're right about this brand Shashi Tharoor thing. It does get me a certain percentage of votes over and above the core party vote. But the core party vote is still there. and somebody else should perhaps develop his or her brand in the region to go with that. But at the same time, I've also said never say never. And I said that, it's a classic in politics. My intention would be that this should be my last term as a Lok Sabha MP. There are possibly other challenges in politics, and there's possibly also a demand, if necessary, that I change my mind, which is why I say never. But this is my intention.
Never say never is correct, for politics can be one fickle lady. In fact, she is one hell of a Ajnabi Hasina.
एक अजनबी हसीना से यूं मुलाकात हो गई, क्या हुआ ये न पूछो, कुछ ऐसी बात हो गई। एक अजनबी हसीना से यूं मुलाकात हो गई।
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.